Hello kind people of YouTube and welcome back to another video. It has been a relatively uneventful start of the weekend in the crypto world, but there's still plenty of stuff for us to talk about, so let's jump right into it. First up, let me just refresh CoinMarketCap real quick. We're seeing today relative stability after nearly a week of the markets crashing down. Pretty much every major coin, major token is up or down less than 1%. With Stellar and Cardano being the only exceptions in the top 10, but they are also only down just about 2%. So we are seeing here some stability that we had not seen in the previous days, with pretty much very little movement, so that is at least a bit reassuring. Importantly, the 24-hour trading volume is down to pretty much exactly the levels before the crash, so the movements in the markets have definitely, at least for now, quieted down. This is of course something we see on the weekends frequently. We usually see a drought of movement and of information during the weekend. So let's jump into some of the news, and the important thing to note here about the markets that doesn't necessarily instantly jump out to you, but that plenty articles have noticed, is pay attention to the Bitcoin Cash price here. 204.92. Now, let's look at the charts here. And let's look at the lowest the price has ever been. And that was just after the coin was out. And here we see the lowest it reached. Whoop. It went pretty low here, pretty low here. In multiple spots, it appears to have been around $205. That was its all-time low. But now if we're looking at the last couple days, we see today it is down at $204, $205. It has been a slow fall, but it crossed that threshold and it seems to have now reached an all-time low. Now keep in mind, this article from CCN here seems to be using numbers from a different source, but that just changes what the exact numbers are, not what the development is. And of course, as always, all articles linked in the description. Since November 7th, the Bitcoin Cash price has dropped from $640 to $190 by more than 70%. Prior to the hash power war between Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin Cash SV, a camp led by CoinGeek, Calvin Iver, and crack Stephen Wright, the price of Bitcoin Cash plunged from $640 to around $450. Bitcoin Cash has continued to extend its loss to the lower end of $200 in the past several days, following the incident, finally dipping below the $200 support level in the last 24 hours. Within a 2-day span, Bitcoin Cash dropped by more than 25% from $242 to $190, leading investors to be concerned about the short-term trend of the cryptocurrency. I think people are concerned about more than the short-term trend here. The hash power war ended with a one-sided victory for Bitcoin Cash. Remember, we talked about this extensively on the last couple days, so we don't have to go into this part of it here. But ultimately what we see now is their numbers seem to be slightly different. On CoinMarketCap it did not drop to 190, but the fact seems to be the case that here too it either crossed the all-time low or just about equaled it. That is very worrisome for Bitcoin Cash because it had just been at a relatively high price. If we're looking here, it was at what appears to have been a 3-month high just about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago. And since then, it has lost 70% of its value for probably the worst thing that Bitcoin Cash has been through. And very troubling. Very troubling. I did just make a video the other day about the future of Bitcoin Cash, and I'm more and more scared about what will happen to it in the long term. Now we all know by now that Bitcoin Cash's hard fork and all the infighting around it, the crypto civil war, that is not only the hash war. You have to keep that distinction in mind. The hash war was just one part of a bigger thing going on there, because among all of that there was also the war for acceptance, the war for public sentiment, and how this whole crash and hard fork influenced both the image of Bitcoin Cash and by extension of Bitcoin. And I believe Bitcoin Cash definitely, and Bitcoin Cash probably to a lesser degree, but to some point as well, have been tainted in some ways in the public image by this. And I'm not sure that Bitcoin Cash, which doesn't really seem to have much of a specific reason to exist past being an upgraded, improved version of Bitcoin. So when you take Bitcoin out of the calculations, Bitcoin Cash doesn't really seem to have anything really speaking for it. The only thing there is the prestige of being associated with Bitcoin. And now after we saw Bitcoin Cash fork into two, now that we know the teams behind them are in massive conflict, we're even threatening each other, and that hurt the image of Bitcoin Cash. And some people might be wondering why even have Bitcoin Cash at this point. And I personally think for every other coin in the top 10, except maybe Litecoin, you can make a pretty strong claim for why they are in their place, for what value they give investors, for what future potential they have. I'm not sure if that is there for Bitcoin Cash, so I'm unsure if it will ever be able to fully recover from what it is seeing right now. Now the price might partially recover, but I really don't think that in a year, 2 years, 3 years, we're still even going to be talking about Bitcoin Cash. It's probably going to be around. It is, unless something catastrophic happens, it will always be around. But I'd be shocked if this was still in the top 10 in a year or two. Probably not even in the top 20. Because among all of this, and you have to keep in mind for investment assets like cryptocurrencies, where a lot of it is speculation, a lot of it is market sentiment, what matters more than anything is not actually what your coin does, it's not actually how good the team behind the coin is, it's not actually which use cases a coin has or which partnerships. Not directly. It is the public sentiment around it and the image of a coin. And how good a coin's technology is, which use cases there are, who's behind it, which companies or use cases are involved with it. That does inform the image in an indirect way, but it's not the same thing. And for Bitcoin Cash, I would argue that there was very, very little to back up its positive image before. And now that the price has seen such a catastrophic drop, and now that it crashed the entire market, I think people are waking up to that, and the public image is declining at a ridiculous rate. We see people are still pulling their money out of Bitcoin Cash, else it wouldn't have fallen even lower. So I'm really worried about the long-term prospects of Bitcoin Cash, and a lot of people are confident that it will fully recover. For most other coins, after a crash like this, I would be. But for Bitcoin Cash, you just have to ask, what is the point of it? Now, I don't think it's I don't think there was no intention behind it. I think when Bitcoin Cash was created as a hard fork of Bitcoin, people saw real issues with Bitcoin and wanted to improve on them. I definitely see that. But what I also see is that pretty much every major coin that is out now, and pretty much everyone that is being released from now on, has such advanced tech as compared to it, can do so much more, has better teams behind it, because the teams behind it didn't have all the infighting that led to such a hard fork. And I'm just unsure if Bitcoin Cash can recover. But ultimately, only time will tell. But Bitcoin Cash is definitely not something that I'm going to suggest anyone invest in. Even if you think the price being so low now might be a chance to get it cheap. You know, almost everything else is also at a low price. But most other coins did not lose 70%. So, you know, plenty other options to grab something for cheap that has very real use cases, that has untapped potential of the type that Bitcoin Cash doesn't seem to have. Name one thing Bitcoin Cash does that no other major cryptocurrency does the same or better. You can't. There's nothing. There is nothing. Let's remain negative for a moment. We are getting price predictions pretty much every day for the major coins and for Bitcoin in particular. And Bitcoin is always the interesting one, because even if you don't care about Bitcoin, which I'm not particularly interested in what is going on with Bitcoin most of the time, the price of Bitcoin does matter insofar as it does drag the entire rest of the market along with it generally. So we see here now the Genesis Trading CEO predicting that Bitcoin will bottom out at about $3,000. Michael Morrow has predicted that Bitcoin will bottom out at about $3,000 after a week that has seen the leading cryptocurrency fall as low as $4,035. Speaking to CNBC, Morrow stated that he does not expect the $4,000 support level to hold out much longer, as selling pressure from pre-2017 Bitcoin investors liquidating their holdings will continue to drive the price downward. Responding to a question about how bad the current market could get, Morrow stated that while the situation certainly does not favor day traders and casual investors looking to make a quick buck, this is not uncharted territory for Bitcoin. He noted that Bitcoin had experienced 75% or greater drawdowns on 5 occasions over its 10-year history. CCN reported earlier that Bitcoin's 79% pullback from its all-time high 11 months ago is actually the smallest of its 5 largest price corrections to date. And this is a wonderful point that a lot of people are forgetting, especially people who have gotten into cryptocurrencies only in 2017 or 2018. If you have been in the markets for a long time, you are probably not too worried about the happenings of 2018 because you have been in the market when the price dropped much more significantly. Now, any asset dropping 79% in a year, that is of course crazy. That is insane. But the crypto world is not like any other investment world. And we have seen much larger drops. We have seen crypto winters that lasted years. And after, we got another bull run. And that bull run was bigger than the one before. It was always bigger than the one before. And we have that proportionality. The worse the price drawback is, the better the bull run after. And that's why a lot of long-term investors, a lot of people who are heavily invested in crypto, a lot of people who are spokespersons for large companies, who are CEOs of large companies in the crypto world, who are behind major coins, are not worried. In Morrow's opinion, institutional investors looking at Bitcoin through this lens will not care too much about where Bitcoin ends 2018 because they are more interested in its movement over 3 to 5 years. He also noted that the $6,000 cost of mining a Bitcoin, which has previously been used as a price floor, will drop as the Bitcoin network's hash rate drops in the face of sustained sub-$6,000 prices. And important here to note that we have seen the hash rate already drop, I believe to a 6-month low. I'm not completely sure, there was an article the other day. The hash rate has dropped, and lower hash rate means the prices for mining also go down. Now that is of course a side effect of the lower prices, that the hash rate will go down as there is less mining going on, as there is less activity on the networks. That makes Bitcoin cheaper to mine again, so when the prices drop, the mining prices tend to just drop along with it. That is why I have never been quite so sure about using the mining prices as a price bottom, because it is conceivable that when the price does drop below them, for a short term, mining can just operate at a loss, because that loss, if you expect a bull market to happen after, you can put those Bitcoin to the side and sell them when the markets go back up again. And for medium or extended price drops, that will likely result in activity in hash rate dropping and in prices of mining also dropping along with it. When pressed for his price floor prediction for the cryptocurrency market Lodestar, he said, "It's really difficult, there are small levels of resistance, and we've seen the 4,000 level get tested twice now in the last couple days, but I really don't think there's too much in the mid-3000s, so you won't find much until you hit the 3,000 flat level." And this is a number that we've heard thrown around a lot. Now it is of course also the next 4,000, and round thousands are always big mental blocks. So I'm not sure if we'll see a drop below 3,000, but I also thought we wouldn't likely see Bitcoin drop it below 5,000. Now, I never ruled it out. If you've been watching my videos for a while, you said you will probably remember that I've been preparing you guys for an extended downturn of the markets. That a bull run in late 2019, late 2018 would be possible, but unlikely. Now at this point it is still possible, but it grows less likely with the day. Now, of course, plenty of people believe that we need to hit a hard bottom where it really can't go down further before that next bull run can happen. So there are always positive ways to spin this. Me personally, I'm not all that concerned with where the price is going at any given time. What I'm concerned with is the long-term potential of the cryptocurrency market, of the projects involved in it, of the coins and tokens. Now, I think if you're in it for the long run, and as an investor, that, in my opinion, is always how you should be treating any major investment. Now, day trading can be very lucrative. But if you're just in it for the long run, if you're not in it for speculation or for volatility, then you shouldn't be too worried about this. Now, day trading, that is not as easy as it usually is. Now, of course, in a downturn, you can still make plenty money day trading, but it's not quite as easy as it would be doing a market that's just moving sideways. But if you're in it for the long run, if you're in it because you believe in certain projects that you're invested in, this should not worry you. This should not worry you at all, and I am personally not worried because the projects that I have put a lot of my investments into, they are ones that have sound technology, that have incredible use cases, that have strategies to go for those use cases. Most of them have a company behind it that makes sure that that everything is being targeted. They have a specific thing they're trying to do, and they're on the way to do that. They have the funding, the people, the technology to achieve that. So I'm not worried. Now, you should be worried if you've invested in a lot of coins without really looking them up. A lot of so-called shitcoins that might not really be doing anything, that might just be quick cash-ins for whoever created them, then you should be worried. But that's why I keep saying do your due diligence and be in it for the long run. If you're hoping to be a millionaire next week, the crypto world is not the right space to be in. Actually, that is not the right mindset to ever have about anything. But if you're in it to make a significant gain on your investment in the coming years, then you're in the right place. And getting to some stablecoins, or can we really call Tether a stablecoin at this point? It has been so damn unstable. But now Tether, or rather the company behind Tether, who are also called Tether, they now think there's a conspiracy against them, and you can't make this up. Media reports about Bahamas-based Deltec Bank accepting suspicious transactions is part of an organized campaign against their customer Tether. Leonardo Real, I assume it's Real, Chief Compliance Officer at Tether, the most popular stablecoin, told CryptoNews.com without specifying who's behind this campaign. According to him, this is all misinformation designed to hurt Tether itself after they unveiled their account with the bank, claiming that they can back their USDT coins one-on-one thanks to those holdings. And this is actually an extended interview. We are not going to read the vast majority of this. If you want to read it yourself, link it in the description. I just want to read the first question and answer because this gives us a general idea of what is going on here. And the question: according to Bloomberg, while federal prosecutors opened a broad criminal probe into cryptocurrencies months ago, they've recently honed in on suspicions that a tangled web involving Bitcoin, Tether, and crypto exchange Bitfinex might have been used to illegally move prices. What's your comment on this? And his response: we stand by the fact that all outstanding USDT are backed one-to-one by fiat US dollars. This has been confirmed on numerous occasions by unrelated parties and at unconnected points in time. Now, I can already stop him right here because this is nonsense. Now, they have not sufficiently confirmed that. It has not sufficiently been verified. There has not been a full publicized audit. All we have is a letter from a bank saying that on one given date, the fiat portfolio, the cash portfolio, had a certain amount of money in it. And that just happened to be days after they burned 500 million Tether. With me, I personally, I'm not sure if they had if that was maybe because they didn't have those 500 million. Because they made 500 million more Tether than they might be able to back up. I'm not saying that's the case, but it definitely sounds possible. So this is already nonsense. But continuing. The story put forth by Bloomberg cites an unbacked independent study which claims that if USDT were to be unbacked, it could indicate manipulation of the Bitcoin price. The entire study relies on the assumption that USDT is unbacked and therefore not sufficiently driven by trader demand. This is flawed, and claims which suggest that USDT transactions aren't driven by demand when it is consistently in the top 2 of traded cryptocurrencies in the space with regards to volume are simply ridiculous by now. To reiterate, the accusations against Tether is based around the assumption that outstanding USDT are unbacked, something which has been proven false time and time again. And this is just a masterclass in bullshit. Like, oh my god. We could go through this sentence for sentence and look at almost every single word here. You can analyze this, you can apply a billion frameworks for analysis, for a million theoretical frameworks that are being used in academia to rip this entire thing apart. But the most interesting things here are that he keeps zoning in on this study being unbacked and independent. And first of all, unbacked doesn't mean anything in this circumstance. Independent, that should be a good thing. Then here relies on the assumption that it's unbacked and therefore not sufficiently. This is flawed. Well, here he brings up consistently in the top 2 of traded cryptocurrencies. That doesn't really tell you much. And it has nothing to do with whether it is backed or not. This does tell you something about trader demand, but of course you get that demand because people are pulling out of other cryptocurrencies. And here he keeps calling it an assumption. Well, they haven't proven that it is wrong. Here he says once again, has been proven false time and time again. This is just an outright lie, and he repeats this many times. This is a popular strategy with people who are trying to spread misinformation, because if you just repeat the lie often enough, confidently enough, that is enough. That is enough. People will believe you. Even if people don't consciously believe you, it will be in the back of people's heads. And this is just this guy is really good. Now, most people will be able to look through him, but he just needs to convince some people. And this article continues, but it's just amazing. He is just building castles in the sky, just imagining massive conspiracies here. When all of this could be taken care of if they just produced an independent, full public audit. That is all they would need to do to get rid of all these rumors, all these criticisms, all the uncertainty, all the bad image that they have gotten. And the fact that after all this time, and keep in mind, they have promised that they would be regularly audited and publicizing their audits. That is part of their white paper. So the fact that they have yet to produce a full independent audit of their holdings, proving once and for all that their stablecoin is backed by US dollars, not by something equivalent to US dollars, not by other fiat currencies, that is backed by US dollars, and that it has always been backed by US dollars, because there is that question of them burning 500 million coins just before revealing their holdings, which could very well mean that a couple days before they didn't have enough money to back all their coins, so they destroyed the coins they couldn't back. So until we have an independent full audit like that, this will continue. And this is not a conspiracy, because they could just they could easily prove if all of this was false. Just give us that audit. That is not that complicated. It's very simple. And the fact that Tether is not doing that, and now they're coming up with massive conspiracy, as if there were organized campaigns to make Tether look bad. No, Tether, you're making yourself look bad. You're doing all of this completely on your own. But let's get into some happier news, because it does give us some information about mass adoption and government stance towards blockchain. The US Department of Defense research arm to host permissionless blockchain workshop. Now you might wonder, why do we care? Why do we care if the US government is holding a workshop about blockchain? We care because this means that US government funds are being used for research into blockchain, and that is a meaningful thing because it tells us about the stance that governments have about crypto. Well, in this case blockchain, it doesn't necessarily have to mean cryptocurrency at the same time, but it tells us about how governments are treating this new technology. And generally, when the US government is doing research into something, that is a good sign, because because they tend to not allow even research into things that they don't want to happen. Like, notably, researching most drugs, whether they are legal or not, can be very hard, but especially for illegal drugs, it's not even possible to research them in the United States because you can't get government funding. So government funding going into this tells us something about the interior stances of the government towards blockchain, and also about blockchain becoming more mainstream, because this means that a lot of people are being introduced in depth in blockchain. The US Defense Advanced Research Project Agency will host a two-day blockchain workshop in February, according to an official request for information posted on November 19th. The ARPA, the research arm of the US Department of Defense, is looking to investigate technologies for distributed consensus during a workshop tentatively scheduled for February 14th and 15th in Arlington. As stated in the 5-page request for information released by the agency's Information Innovation Office, of particular interest to DARPA are so-called permissionless distributed consensus protocols. Permissionless systems are described in the paper as protocols where any individual may join in the computation. Now we don't have to read the whole thing, but you can, of course, if you want to. This is not the first time that we're seeing a government do research in, provide workshops into, and just generally look into blockchain. But I believe it is one of the first, if not the first times, that the US government is using funding for research into blockchain in this way. I think there has been some research done, but all into the legal issues surrounding it, not into the technology. And this is very much into the technology. Now, there's a myriad reasons why the US Department of Defense might be doing this. Now, first and foremost, of course, if blockchain can be used to transmit and to save information and move money and move resources, they of course want to also know how to track and safeguard against things like that. But there's a million possible reasons here. I just thought it was interesting. It tells us more about the status of blockchain technology in the public eye and in government's eyes. And it's just very, very interesting to me personally. And with that, I'm going to end today's video. As always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a spectacular weekend and that your weekend will continue to be spectacular. If you enjoyed this video and if you want to get more like these, I do these every single day, so make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. If you really, really like my videos, there are ways to support me directly in the description, either through crypto donations, through PayPal donations, or through a Patreon, where you can back for $1 or $3 a month. That is super appreciated. And in the description you will also find links to all these articles as well as my social media pages. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back with another video tomorrow.